Cuomo, feel the noise. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo did sexually harass 11 separate women who worked for him, according to a report that was released on Tuesday by the state of New York's Attorney General's office. Andrew Cuomo, for his part, as we record right now, is not resigning, but we are leaving space in recording in case he is, because news happens on Wednesdays very inconveniently for us. Alyssa, you're in New York. How do you feel about what's going down and what's the attitude there?
Oh, well, let me tell you, the tide's turning on this motherfucker. You know, a couple months ago when New Yorkers were asked, like, should he resign, it was something like less than 30%. Well, according to the news this morning, we're closer to 60%. His allies have jumped ship. You know, I think that a lot of folks who said back when the first few allegations came out, left space for the investigation, and they said, look, if this bears out, then he should step down. Well, one by one, the dominoes fell. Schumer, you need to resign. Gillibrand, you need to resign. Joe Biden was like, sorry, it's time to go. And so, you know, one of the things I thought was interesting for anyone who watched it was Cuomo gave a statement with a video, a pre-recorded statement, that included a montage of photos of him inappropriately touching, kissing, hugging, whatever, lots of people. But he also included pictures of President Obama and President Bush hugging hurricane victims, being like, see, we all hug people. And it's like, bitch, please. These things are not the same. And, you know, so right now, here in New York, the New York State Assembly, the Judiciary Committee, is looking into the articles of impeachment. And one fun fact about New York is that if there is an impeachment trial, if he does not resign, technically here, the lieutenant governor takes over as he is being investigated. Now, he could pull a real Trump and be like, fuck that shit, I'm not going anywhere. But there's not a lot of precedent, but as the Constitution, I think, provides, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul would be acting governor during the impeachment trial.
Interesting. And if that were to happen, she would be New York State's first female governor, correct?
Correct.
You know, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I wonder how many women only got a chance because some man who shouldn't have been above them tripped over their own dick, finally.
Oh, that's a good point.
You know, like, Kathy Hochul, as far as I know, is a fully competent person.
Totally.
Who has, like, any as much business as anybody of being being the governor. And I just wonder, like, how many Kathy Hochuls are there out there who are, like, just as competent, if not more, than the person who is elevated above them, but only get a chance when that person fucks up so bad that there's no more denying it.
Erin, that feels like a Hysteria holiday pitch if I ever heard one.
Oh, geez. Well, listeners, if you have any examples of women who are exceptional, who only got a chance because the man above them screwed up so bad that it could no longer be denied, send them in to us. We are hysteria@crooked.com. I wanted to make a comment about Andrew Cuomo's press conference. It's hard for me to watch men that I am very angry with try to defend themselves. So I could only watch bits and pieces, but I did see, it's not a press conference, it was a statement. But, you know, the statement was very much along the lines of, like, the narcissist's prayer. You've heard the narcissist's prayer, right?
Do it for me.
That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it.
And at the very end of the day, it's clear you just misunderstood me.
Exactly. This is on you for misunderstanding me. What do you make of the excuse that he made that there was a generational or cultural difference that caused 11 separate women to accuse him of sexual harassment in the workplace?
Well, one, I think when 11 separate people are involved, it's thin. But also, if that were true, if he wanted to claim I was raised at a different time, then you apologize, you say you were wrong, you make amends, you do better, You know, I mean, nothing that he has done. If that is the case, and he's like, I was, you know, some people were raised by parents who used terrible language. Guess what? When you get older, you do better and you learn. And everything that he put out yesterday was just a fucking excuse. And he took ownership of nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And so much of this is the workplace. Oh, this was the one that fucking got me in the ass. I don't know where it got me. It got me all over. When he was like, here's the thing. This is, it's working in the governor's office is tough. It's hard work. It's hard work. And some people just like misunderstand because they can't handle the pressure. And it's like, oh, buddy, I worked in the White House. You were in the governor. And like, this isn't what happens when like workplaces are hard and you work a lot of hours that you like grope each other. Like that's not, also, it's not like he's explaining a consensual affair. He felt women up, made them uncomfortable, was their boss. You know, I think one of the most damning allegations, not that I don't mean that there's a spectrum, but I think that it's one that we hadn't heard before, was how he assaulted the state trooper there to protect him. That he would feel her back in the elevator, that he would like, I don't know, it sounds like touch her uterus when she was walking by him. There to protect him. And he still was like, hey girl, like, no. So
yeah, one of the perks of being a person in power is not that you get unfettered access to the bodies of people below you in the power structure. And I feel like there's a lot of men that don't understand that, Andrew Cuomo among them. I also want to say, you and I have both brought this up, but he's a very Trumpy person.
Very Trumpy.
There's a lot of parallels between him and Donald Trump, even though he's gotten a lot of mileage out of being anti-Trump or being, you know, this brave guy standing up against Trump. His personal conduct and the way that he's handling this is very much along the lines of Donald Trump. Although Trump wouldn't have put out a video about how he like hugs everyone. He would have been like, fuck you, and not said anything. It's almost worse the way that Cuomo did it, I think. I also want to say that this is another example in many, many examples that I've noticed in my adult life of women turning on somebody and being like, this guy is a fucker. This guy is a fucker.
Yeah.
And then like a year later, everyone is like, wow, nobody knew that this guy was a fucker. And it's like, oh my gosh, women from like literally Zephyr Teachout, Cynthia Nixon, to Meghan McCain and Essie Cupp, and like people who are more conservative but not necessarily complete ideologues, all were like, this guy's a fucking creep, you know? And
creep.
And like how much do we have to harp on, hey, we don't like this guy, bad vibes city from this guy, before the general public and the Chris Cillizas of the world like believe us. And speaking of Chris's, I want to talk about Chris Cuomo. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So Andrew Cuomo also assembled a super team. A super team? Yeah. A super team of advisors to help him navigate the PR landmine field that was these accusations when they first started surfacing and then resurfacing starting, I think, in December of last year. Among those consultants, among those people in his team, was his brother, Chris Cuomo, who is an anchor at CNN. Alyssa, what do you make of that?
So here's the thing. With the Cuomos, it always comes down to hubris, right? Would I think that if my sister were in trouble, would I want to help her? Yes, I would. If my sister were governor, would I want to help her? Yes, I would. And I was a news anchor. However, what I wouldn't do is be like, he was putting memos out. He was doing conference calls. It's like, I mean, it's like, I don't expect him to have superhuman, sorry, brother, you know, I'm not going to even talk to you about this. But the hubris of putting that shit in writing and leading conference calls with like hordes, like groups and groups of people trying to figure out a strategy, which, by the way, is the fireable offense.
Mm-hmm.
you know? And
Yeah.
so I think that, you know, I allow for a certain amount of like, this is family, but like fucking get it together. And he'd already been called out on it once before and he just kept doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it is very hubristic, and you bring up a good point, because I think about what I would do for my siblings, and one of the things I would do is not endanger my entire career and my morality and the reputation of my workplace in order to defend indefensible behavior. I just wouldn't do that. And I think that it's like, it's kind of it's not okay to even ask that of somebody. Like, I wouldn't even, if I did something super fucked up, I wouldn't like come to you, Alyssa, and be like, can you be on my super team of like damage control professionals? Because that's just like out of line.
Totally
you know?
agree. Totally agree.
It's
I mean, though,
totally
you understand how the lapse could happen, how someone as megalomaniacal as Andrew Cuomo could go to his brother Chris Cuomo and be like, brother, help me. But I mean, the whole thing is just such it's like shit soup.
Yeah, it's really gross, and I definitely don't want a piping hot serving of it. I do want to point out one thing before we move on to like the will he or won't he resign question. A thing that I think about a lot, with this Cuomo coverage is I'm glad that he's getting a lot of coverage for being a shithead. New York is a huge state. He's in charge of a lot of people, and he shouldn't be able to get away with mistreating his employees in that way and to that extent, nor should he get away with, getting a $5 million book deal to write a book about a pandemic response that he actually like fudged. There's a bunch of stuff that he should not be getting away with, and I'm glad the media is reporting on it. But I think a lot about how the kind of death of local journalism means that we sometimes get attention to people like Andrew Cuomo who are fucking up at the state level, but national audiences aren't necessarily paying attention to these like state level fuckery things that are happening. I guest hosted What a Day this weekend. This is one of the things I brought up when I was guest hosting. But the AG of South Dakota, the current Attorney General of South Dakota, ran over a guy and killed him with his car last fall.
Did know that. Know that.
And he's still the Attorney General, and they're charging him only with misdemeanors, and he's still the AG. And each misdemeanor carries a 30-day jail sentence, and I think they charged him with 3. So he might have to go to jail for 90 days for being on his phone and killing a man with his car. So that's happening in South Dakota. And look, South Dakota does not contribute to the national economy to the extent that New York does. Nor are there, there are cool people there, but there's not many people there, period. So, there's not as many people that this directly affects. But, like, this guy is still an attorney general, and that is not something that we should be letting slide. I also want to bring up Eric Greitens, who was the governor of Missouri, who resigned in 2018 because of a credible accusation that he sexually assaulted and harassed a woman in a really horrific way. And I've written about it for the Daily Beast, and I've talked about it before, but this guy is like a fucking monster. He resigned from the gubernatorial office under pressure from his own party because he was facing like multiple scandals. And now he's running for Senate.
No!
He's running for Senate. And like, I'm not saying don't pay attention to Andrew Cuomo, because we should be, and I'm glad we are. But like, let's not let it be at the expense of these small-time fuckers who could become big-time fuckers. Because if somebody like Eric Greitens gets in the U.S. Senate, he's going to be like an even worse Josh Hawley, And Missouri is too good to allow that shit to happen to them twice. I know that Missouri is better than that.
Isn't Missouri the show me state?
Yeah.
Show me your best, Missouri.
Show me your best, because I think that they're
gotta be better.
We're currently not being shown it. Okay. Do you think he's going to resign?
I actually do think he's going to resign.
When?
Because, I think that it's going to take him a bit, but I think that he is not someone who will endure an impeachment trial and watching all of his former allies just like ditch him. It just feels like more than his ego could take, but I've been wrong before.
Yeah. But you've also been a news witch before, so
that's true.
Who can say? I think that I would say I'm about 60-40. I'm taking the like easy way out here. I think I'm 60-40. He will resign. He won't resign. I think we do know now that he will not be president. That's one thing that's nice. He'll never.
He will
be
not be president. He will not be president.
Never be the president. But I think that if he does resign, he'll do it in a way that is like kind of a like PR professional advised way. So he'll do it on like a Friday after Hannity airs, after Tucker airs, after all the primetime news shows are in the can, so that it's not in the cycle until Monday, and at that point it won't be like dominating everything. But yeah, that's my prediction, is like a Friday evening resignation.
And he'll say he's doing it for New York State. He'll never say he did anything wrong.
Yeah, and you know what? When is Labor Day? It's coming
September
up, right?
7th. September 7th.
Okay, well, if he can hang on for a month, he might do it right before Labor Day weekend.
That is Friday of Labor Day feels right.
Yeah, that seems right. I mean, if we were near Thanksgiving, he would be doing it on like the Wednesday before
Wednesday night when everyone's out at the bars.
Exactly.
You know, Delta.
Yeah, when everybody is wearing masks at bonfires and socially distanced. I don't know. What do you do during a pandemic on Thanksgiving? I don't know. Let's move on to some quick toasts and roasts. Toast to Cori Bush. Why are we toasting Cori Bush this week? I mean, we always toast her.
We're toasting Cori Bush because she wasn't having it. The eviction moratorium expired last Saturday. She, as someone who had been homeless in her life previously or without a home, she wanted to bring attention to the issue. Many of her colleagues joined in. AOC went down to see her. I think Bernie Sanders showed up at her sleep-in, sit-in on the Capitol steps. And Speaker Pelosi was helping to draw attention to it. And now we hear that the CDC is going to extend the eviction moratorium until October 1st.
Yes. And also she has gotten a lot of attention for her efforts. Like if she was not out there,
correct,
she wouldn't have gotten near the attention to the issue that it deserves. And she got some snaps from Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee, one of the rightest people in Congress, like one of the only correct people about the Iraq War, if people remember that. She gave her some props. Also, I want to say that Cori Bush standing up in favor of extending the eviction moratorium brings home the fact that we need more people in Washington who know what it's like to be a regular person.
Yep, definitely.
Because regular people interests are not represented when it's a bunch of Joe Manchin houseboat party motherfuckers. What we need are people who understand what it's like to be evicted from something.
Right.
You know, and she's just I just think the world of her, and I want her to come on the show. But she's got more important work to do, I think, usually most of the time. Okay. Let's do a quick, I'm going to do a roast.
Let's roast someone.
Oh, man. Senator Sinema. We've been attacking, we've been like Dems in disarray this episode. But you know what? I think that it's really important to be honest when we are disappointed with somebody from our own
agree.
side.
Don't you think it makes our appointments that much more valid down the road?
Exactly. We are, what is Lovett? Lovett's a straight shooter.
Yeah.
What gives a straight shooter rep or something like that. No, it's just, you know, we don't bullshit when we don't pretend that we like when something is happening if we don't actually like it. So Senator Sinema, who I saw somebody on Twitter refer to as a, quote, chaotic bisexual, which I found very funny. Sinema won't stick around to vote on the infrastructure bill because she is going on vacation and she doesn't want to change her vacation plans. Schumer announced that they might cut the recess short in August so that they can vote on the infrastructure bill. And Sinema says she'll be leaving. If that's the case, she just needs to go on vacation. Does she want people to not like her?
Here's my thing about all this. It's like, look, if you come, like, you know, it's the establishment in me. It's like if you are institutionalist in me. It's like if she were to say, I read the bill and I have some fundamental disagreements. Here's how this doesn't help the people of Arizona, yada, yada, yada. I might not, like, get on her so bad. But, like, she just flits around and is like, yeah, I have vacation and I'm not staying. And when she said that she wasn't going to support the bill, she hadn't even read it. And it's like, even Joe Manchin does the work. I mean, at least he reads the bill.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself often thinking more fondly about Lisa Murkowski than I do of Krysten Sinema. Even though Murkowski is a Republican and she has voted in like line with the Democrats way less than Senator Sinema ever has. For whatever reasons, like, Murkowski is more capable of projecting an air of having principles. And Sinema is just sort of like just kind of, it seems like chaotic, selfish, and glib. And,
yeah, totally.
And I don't think that like it's sexist to point that out because, you know, if a man were acting like this, we would be saying "fuck that guy" every week.
And also like Lisa Murkowski, you know, she said, here's the thing: Lisa Murkowski's like, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and she's normally within 5 degrees of that. Sinema campaigned as a progressive.
Yeah, an anti-Iraq war progressive.
She came as a progressive. So to me, it's like, you fake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's hoping that 2022 sees us, the Democrats, widen their majority in the Senate. The map looks pretty good. The Republican candidates look pretty bad. And if we win enough seats, guys, Krysten Sinema won't matter anymore. Even though she's not up for election until 2024. But we can basically...
It's like a lifetime.
Promote cinema erasure if we simply expand the majority in the Senate. I mean, I guess it's not that simple of a task, but I think we can do it. Okay, well, I'm really excited for the interview that is coming up after this. You know, Alyssa, I think good things can happen on Twitter, for sure.
Oh, yeah, sometimes. Real good things can happen.
Right. So this interview got set up because I DM'd this person and was like, hey, I saw your tweets. And that's why she's on the show this week. So
I can't wait to hear your interview.
I can't wait for you to hear it either. Stick around. I have an interview with Amanda Knox coming up. We are very excited today to welcome Amanda Knox to Hysteria. She's a journalist, an author. Her New York Times bestselling book is called Waiting to be Heard. And she's the co-host of her very own podcast called Labyrinths, which is really good, Amanda, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's really good. Welcome. First of all, I want to ask you, like, how are you doing? You've had kind of a week.
I have had kind of a week, although it was a bit unexpected, honestly. I feel like I've been speaking about these issues, about representation, about the misappropriation of individual people's narratives for a long time, and particularly based upon my own experience of having my story sort of treated like Dracula, where everyone gets to have their own spin on it every few years. So, you know, I have been speaking up about this issue for a while now, but for some reason this week it really resonated with people, and I'm really grateful for that. So thanks for reaching out and wanting to talk to me about this sort of broader issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like just to bring our listeners up to speed if they're not already. Last week you wrote a piece that was published on Medium and then also in The Atlantic, which was responding to the forthcoming release of the movie Stillwater, which is a movie that has used your name to promote a sensationalized version of your story involving a character that is like a sensationalized version of you. So it's like a funhouse mirror, but you don't get to have any fun. Can you walk us through how you became aware that your name was being used yet again without your consent, and what prompted you to write what you wrote?
Well, I found out about the movie and their use of my name like everyone else did when the trailer came out and when the reviews started happening. So I was given no sort of special prior knowledge or treatment in the fact that this was a story that was inspired by my case and that was directly sort of representing it in a new light in this director's imagination. And I think the thing that my initial response to it, I actually did a Twitter thread when I first learned about it, and I didn't really know how they were going to approach the story, was I hope they do a good job. I hope that they are going to represent the story well. They're going to humanize the individuals involved. There's a lot of people whose lives are at stake and reputations are at stake in the representation of these stories, whether or not they're being represented in journalism or in fiction. And I crossed my fingers. And then I did a little bit of research and I found out that when Tom McCarthy says he was inspired by the premise of the Amanda Knox case, but he wanted to take it into a new direction, he didn't, in fact, take it really in a new direction at all. He just further entrenched the ongoing false narrative, which is some kind of sexualized crime that I was either directly or indirectly involved in through this character that he presented. So it was frustrating because I feel like, once again, it's the mythology of my case that is given airtime and is given space, and it is not so much the actual reality of the story that is given time, and neither is my voice ever sort of considered as an important part of the authorship of and development of these kinds of projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sort of like they're treating your humanity as like an inconvenient detail, which is like really, really fucked up. I've seen mostly positive reaction to the piece that you wrote and to your Twitter thread on social media, but I block people for being annoying on Twitter, so I think I might just be in a specific corner.
I am guilty of that as well.
I mean, seriously, I have like the lowest threshold. I'm like, that was annoying. Block. I just no more patience. So I've seen positive reaction to the piece. Has the reaction overall been positive and supportive? And have you heard from anybody involved in the film since it went live?
So I have received quite a bit of really positive feedback from the piece, and that has been incredibly encouraging because I do feel like we're moving in this direction of a sort of awakening about like the power dynamics in storytelling. And this is not just the power dynamics that happen in the courtroom and not just in journalistic media, but also in Hollywood, and the stories that certain people are empowered to tell and who gets to be the author of those narratives. And you know, we talk a lot about like cultural appropriation and when stories are told at the expense of groups of people. And what I'm hoping for is a conversation to begin about stories and narratives that are told at the expense of individual people as well, who are not the Matt Damons and the Tom McCarthys of the world, but who are people like myself who found themselves in the middle of a big, insane story that was completely out of their control and that continues to be out of their control. So that was my goal in bringing this piece up. And I think the really encouraging thing is, for some reason, it clicked. People reached out to me to say, I never thought of it that way. And, you know, that has been deeply encouraging. What's been less encouraging is that I have not yet heard back from anyone affiliated with the film. And I wonder if part of that is because they are assuming that I'm coming from a place of wanting to be litigious. I'm genuinely not. I'm more interested in having a conversation with people about their predispositions towards other people's stories. If anything, I view this as a potential really wonderful learning experience and bridge building exercise between someone like myself who finds themselves constantly recycled as other people's content and those who are content creators. So that they have that in mind the next time they go ahead and tell someone else's story, preferably with their consent.
Right. You know, it's funny. I have like a small anecdote. When I was like early on in my career, I was working at a blog and I wrote a blog post, like a one-off blog post where I was really snarky about this college writer who wrote a piece from like a conservative perspective. And I was really, really snarky. And apparently the piece went viral on her campus and it really like ruined her week. And like over a year later, I was at a party in DC and she was at the party, the girl that I had written this thing about, and totally forgotten about writing the piece. And she later sent me a message on Twitter that was like, I was going to come up to you and say hi. And that started a conversation between the two of us. I was like, I treated you like fodder for a piece, and I didn't think about your feelings. Anyway, she's one of my really good friends now. We talk all the time. But I feel like the thing that you're trying to do, which is like people just treat the subject of your story like a human being, is something that can have like a really positive outcome for people that are sometimes guilty or have been guilty in the past of dehumanizing people. Like there's another side to it. But yesterday I was there was an old clip from an interview you did with Chris Cuomo that was recirculating, because Chris Cuomo is in a little bit of hot water for some poor decisions that he has made.
I saw that a little bit.
I watched it and I couldn't believe how fucking gross it was. Like, I couldn't believe how gross it was.
Were you into deviant sex? Insensitive question, but hey, we got to get to what it is. This fuels the doubt. That's the theory. Knox is into some freaky sexual things.
If I were you, I would have like a really long mental shit list of people in media. Do you have a mental shit list? Like, are you still angry at anybody who you rightfully could be angry about? And if not, like, how have you moved on from holding on to that anger?
Well, I think that all of those interviews that took place at that time are sort of all guilty of the same and this systemic problem of treating people who find themselves at the center of these big stories as if they need to be treated like the characters in the morality plays that they have been projected as, and not as human beings that legitimately could be your friend or your daughter or, you know, whatever. What occurs to me today, with a ton of perspective and a bunch of journalistic experience now, is that just because something has been put out there that Amanda Knox is a deviant sex drug addict, and that was what was presented by the prosecution without any evidence, doesn't mean that you, as a journalist, must pursue that course of thinking in questioning of that person if there's no reason to believe that in the first place. No one should. The kinds of questions that lots of people, not just Chris Cuomo, were posing me in that time period were questions that honestly I shouldn't have ever have had to answer, because there was no evidence that I had murdered Meredith Kercher, and there was no evidence that I was a deviant sex addict. And it was all based upon this false narrative that was presented in the courtroom for the sake of winning an argument in court instead of actually coming to the truth of the matter. So if I were Chris Cuomo, I would not have asked myself those questions. I would have asked different questions. Do I think that he is particularly like a heinous example of it? There were lots of heinous examples of that at the time. So I don't want to just pick him out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know, but it's fun because today in the news. Has anybody reached out to you to like make amends for that period of time, for treating you in a way that was like unfair?
You know, it's interesting. It's less the people who found themselves in the position to portray me, and more the people who are consuming those kinds of media. So I've had people who followed my case from the headlines and who have approached me to say, I am so sorry for treating you as entertainment. What I've not heard is that from the people who actually created those headlines, I'm sorry for having turned you into entertainment. I have yet to hear that. And that would be nice. I'm going to be honest. I'm not counting on it. I'm not sitting on any kind of guarantee. But I am hoping that starting this conversation so that we sort of pause to question how we are entitled to other people's lives and stories is something we become more self-aware of as storytellers.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to take a second to pivot and talk about your podcast, Labyrinths. So I'm currently listening to the series that you and your husband did on infertility, and I just wanted to compliment you on it. It's probably like the bravest depiction I've heard in a podcast of infertility issues. It's super raw.
Yeah.
It's super raw, and you went through it yourself. So was it a hard decision to put such a personal journey out there like that, since like so many people already think they know so much about you? Like, have you gotten feedback from listeners about like hearing this podcast and hearing this series, and like how has that resonated?
So thank you for bringing that up, because it's something that I'm really proud of. So in Labyrinths, I try to enact all of the principles in journalism and storytelling that I see lacking in the world at large. And Stillwater is an example where I ask myself in any story, who has the most at stake? And then I try to center that person's perspective in the narrative. And in this case, infertility is this shocking experience that is shockingly common, extremely existential, and yet is not very much talked about, is largely taboo, and is largely kept in the shadows, even from people who like, I know I've talked to people who wouldn't even tell their parents about the struggles that they're going through because it feels like so deeply personal. And if it comes across as brave and raw and real, it's in large part because of the women and couples that I talk to. These people, I reached out after having experienced my own journey and been shocked by how little I knew and how little guarantee there was, and just how alone I felt. And then all of these people reached out to me to say, I felt that too. And with all our voices combined, we really tried to cover a lot of ground of the various ways that fertility can be a struggle and sometimes end in not what you expected it to be, and how processing that can really change you as a human being. So I think the other aspect, or the other part of that, to answer your question, of how does it feel to get so personal and so candid about something so deeply personal, I've been kind of stripped naked and bare since 2007 while I was on trial. So really, I am familiar with the power of vulnerability and just brutal honesty, and how much good it can do for others when I and others are willing to expose what is deeply true and honest about ourselves. There is great strength in vulnerability, and that is something that I try to portray in every episode of my podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing specifically that I would recommend everybody listen to that series specifically, but I thought especially if you're a person who hasn't gone through infertility, and the reason why is because I think you don't think about it.
Yes.
But you know somebody who's gone through it. And so this is just a really good way, I think, for anybody to familiarize themselves with like what your friends have almost certainly gone through.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really glad it exists. Thank you for making it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, you're welcome. Is there anything else you're working on right now that you're particularly proud of or excited about?
I mean, my ongoing series that I have coming ahead for Labyrinths are really exciting and also deeply personal. So I'm excited to share all of that. I'm looking into situations like the ethics of true crime journalism and psychedelic mushrooms and the satanic panic. All of these are issues that I'm deep diving into in this in these upcoming seasons of Labyrinths, and I'm really proud of the work, and I'm really proud of the people who have been willing to share their stories and perspectives with me. So I honestly would just point to that.
Awesome. Yeah, those are things I'm interested in as well. Psychedelic mushrooms specifically.
Yeah.
So Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for speaking out and continuing to speak out. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.